Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning into our weekly podcast. Our prayer is that this message would speak life into your world and that God would use it to encourage you in your journey of faith.
Well, today we're gonna bring this series about relationships to a grand finale, and I'm gonna preach today about how to handle hurt. How many people think that's a good topic? And I'm just gonna be right up front. This book has been really inspiring to me. What's cool is that I was already planning to preach about this, and then this came across my path 1 week out, which was really helpful. This book by Jensen Franklin, it's called Love Like You've Never Been Hurt. I want to highly recommend this book. He also has a reading plan in the YouVersion Bible app that you can check out, and this book is amazing. And so let me just start today by asking the question, how many people in this room, now listen carefully because you might think I'm saying something that I'm not, how many people in this room have never been hurt before by another human being? I'm just going to take my time and just double check, all right? All right, double check? Okay, no hands. Not a great way to start your message when you don't get any response. Okay, no, it's actually good. All right, so just to make sure that we're really like on the same track here and on the right path, what I'm going to say is definitely relevant. How many people in this place have been hurt at least one time by another person in their life? So because we had no hands before, I'm assuming we got 100%. I'm just checking. Yeah. We got 100%. We got some who are embarrassed, don't like putting their hand up, but you didn't put it up before, so we're assuming you're in this group. So let me get it straight. Every single person in this room has been hurt by somebody in their life. Is that true? If it's truly me. Every person in this room has been hurt at one point in their life, which means this message is relevant for every single person today. But not only have we been hurt by people, but I want to take a step of faith, a bit of a stab in the dark, and assume that every single person here who put their hand up has actually hurt somebody else, including myself. See, we've all been hurt, but we've also all hurt other people. Every single one of us. Maybe through words, maybe through actions, maybe by mistake, maybe intentionally. We have all been hurt, and we've all hurt other people. And, I wish we could kind of stop there and then change the narrative for the future, but I hate to tell you this, I hate to break it to you. In the future, you will all be hurt again, and you're all going to hurt someone else again. End of the message. Great hope here for 2019. But let's be real. If we're real, and we're not religious, and we're not fake, and we're not phony, but if we're real, and we're talking about real relationships, then the reality is that we're all going to be hurt in 2019 at least once. And we're all probably going to hurt someone else in some way. Hopefully not intentionally, all right? Hopefully not intentionally. I'm not giving you kind of like license to just go and burn people. But the facts are that being hurt and unfortunately hurting others is part of humanity. It's part of being human. And I guess the goal is that we would learn to minimize how much we hurt other people. We don't want to hurt anyone. I don't want to hurt people. Sometimes my best efforts to not hurt somebody will end up hurting somebody else. And it's the kind of world where no matter what you do, you can't avoid hurt. It's just in the nature of life. It just kind of shows up. So today, I thought it'd be appropriate in this series that we talk about how to handle hurt. If hurt's coming, if we've all been hurt, maybe today we're still carrying hurts from the past. If hurt is real, how do we handle hurt? How do we handle it? Legendary boxer Muhammad Ali was on a plane one time, and he was just getting ready for the flight, and he hadn't put his seatbelt on yet, and so the flight attendant came over and said, Mr. Ali, can you please fasten your seatbelt? And he looked at her and said, girl, Superman don't need a seatbelt. He thought he was above any potential hurt or any potential problems that could come. But I love the air hostess response. She said, well, Superman don't need an airplane. And let's just say today that it's safe to say none of us are Superman, right? None of us are Superman here. we actually are subject to hurts and problems. And, in fact, Jesus actually said it like this in Luke 17 verse 1. He said, it's impossible that offense won't come. Isn't that crazy? Even Jesus told us, hey, get ready because hurt is going to come at some point. It's inevitable. One translation says, betrayal is inevitable in life. It's just going to happen. So how do you handle hurt when it shows up in life and relationships? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to start with a cool story from 2 Samuel chapter 10. And I love this story. It's going to get some people laughing and it's going to be cool. You're going to think, where is this going? But just hold on to your chair because we're going to land somewhere with this story. But I'm going to read it, 5-6 verses of this, and it starts in 2 Samuel chapter 10 and verse 1. It says, sometime after this, King Nahash of the Ammonites died and his son Hanun became king. Then David, everyone knows who David is, right? King David said, I am going to show loyalty to Hanun just as his father Nahash was always loyal to me. And so David sent ambassadors, important men, to express sympathy to Hanun about his father's death. That sounds like a pretty nice gesture, doesn't it? This other nation that they'd done delegations with, they had a relationship. The dad dies, and the son takes over. This young prince comes up through the ranks and takes on the reins of the kingdom. And David, who's a good old friend of the father, decides to let him know that, hey man, we're for you. We're sorry to hear about your dad, but we're here for you. We want to support you. And so he sends ambassadors. In the next part of the chapter, it says this, but when David's ambassadors arrived in the land of Ammon, the Ammonite commanders said to Hanun, their master, do you really think these men are coming here to honor your father? No, David has sent them to spy out the city so they can come in and conquer it. Don't you hate it when people misunderstand what your intentions are? Don't you hate it when you're just trying to do the right thing and somebody perceives it as being the wrong thing? These guys were doing what their king had wanted them to do. As far as they're concerned, they're in the perfect will of God, obeying their king, the leader of the land, the God-ordained man, the man of God, and they're doing what he wants them to do, and all of a sudden they're being misunderstood. I don't know if you've ever been misunderstood before in a relationship, but it can be really painful. It can be really painful when somebody sees your actions and reads into it a completely different heart or a completely different motive to what you actually are carrying. And here's these guys, and they're doing what they think is the will of God. They're serving their king, and they're being misunderstood. And so in verse 4, it says, so Hanun seized David's ambassadors, shaved off half of each man's beard, cut off their robes at the buttocks, and sent them back to David in shame. That's a pretty harsh. That's like, hey, we don't trust you guys. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to shave off half your beard. We're going to cut your robe so your butt's showing. And we're going to send you home, basically with your tail between your legs. I think it's pretty safe to say that if ambassadors from the USA were sent by Donald Trump to come and speak to ScoMo and talk to him about, plans for the future and encourage him, and he was like, I don't trust you Americans, all you want to do is rule the world and blow people up, so we're gonna shave half your beard off, we're gonna cut a hole out of the back of your trousers, and we're gonna send you back to your first class seat on Qantas and say, have a nice day. I mean, if that happened, this is what actually, it's kind of what's going on here. If that happened, do you think they would be slightly offended? I mean, do you think they'll be just slightly hurt? Like a little bit, pride is damaged? I mean, not just a little, I think a lot. Especially in this culture. The beard represents maturity, honor, and all of these things. And so to have that shamed publicly, they wore these kind of special outfits and they had like a kind of a robe thing that came down, and to cut that off was dishonoring. So here's these guys, they've been completely shunned and misunderstood, they've been hurt, they've been offended and shamed. Now, I think all of us have been in situations at some point where we've been hurt, offended by others. We're just going about our thing as someone does something crazy and it hurts us and it dishonors us and it leaves us feeling ashamed. Some people have had horrific things done to them. both physically and emotionally, and it brings deep hurt. But I love what happens next here in verse 5. It says, when David heard what had happened, when the king heard, when the Lord heard about it, David could represent God in this scenario. When the king heard about it, he sent messengers to all the men that had been shamed and hurt. He said, stay at Jericho until your beards grow out, and then come back, for they felt deep shame because of their appearance. So here's these guys, and they start, walking back, going back to God. Have you ever come to God just hurt and like, God, I don't know what's going on. I don't know how that happened. I just showed up doing what I thought you called me to do, what you wanted me to do, and I just got absolutely hammered by this person. What is going on? And we're kind of walking back to God, and God meets us at that point. Here's the thing, first thing about hurt. God sees your hurt, right? God sees your hurt. He's concerned about your hurt. When David heard about the shame and what had been done to these men, he was deeply troubled. He didn't laugh it off and go, oh, that's so funny. Someone get me a picture and send it over. I want to see what they look like. He didn't find humor in this. He didn't laugh at them. He didn't belittle them. He actually empathized with them. And he said, guys, instead of coming back into the city and everyone seeing you like this, I'm going to cover you right now. Go to Jericho and have safety until your beard grows back and then come into the city. Now, what's so important about Jericho? Well, here's what Jericho speaks to us today. Jericho, one of its meanings is sweet fragrance. Sweet fragrance. So what's a response? How do we handle hurt? The first thing the king does is he sends them to a sweet place. And here's what God says. When hurt comes into our life, he knows about it, and here's what he says to us. Stay sweet. Stay sweet. All right, I know you're mad. I know you're hurt. I know you're frustrated, but here's what I want you to do. Stay sweet. Stay sweet, because why? As you stay sweet, your beard's going to grow back. It's going to be okay. Give it some time. Stay sweet. Chill out. Give it some time. It's going to be okay. Sometimes when we get hurt, we think that's the end of the world, right? When hurt comes in our life, when a relationship is struggling, sometimes we just think, there's a sense of like, I've hit a roadblock, I don't know what to do, or maybe a sense of urgency that you should react and do something, taking it into your own hands, but God just says, stay sweet. Somebody say, stay sweet. Stay sweet. You know what else Jericho represents is that this is the city where the walls came down. Do you remember that? Joshua, this is a city where the walls came down. And how many people know that when hurt comes into our life, one of our first reactions, our first responses can be to put walls up. And so when we're looking to put walls up, God is reminding us of the place where the walls came down. And he's saying, the walls are down at Jericho. It's a sweet fragrance. Go and hang out in the sweet place where you'll always be remembering that the walls have come down. And so how to handle hurt, first up, is stay sweet. And I didn't put this one on the screen, but keep the walls down. Keep the walls down. Jericho is a place that the walls fell down. God doesn't want us to allow hurts to break our relationships. Hurts are something to be ready to handle. And instead of letting them destroy our relationships, we can actually become masters of handling hurt, and we can process them and handle them and move on and still keep the relationships. I don't know about you, but I think that sounds like good news. I don't want to lose relationships because I did something dumb. Why should 10 years, 5 years, 2 years of friendship go out the window because someone did something stupid? Why not learn how to handle the hurt better and like a master navigate the pain and bring the relationship back together? I believe this is a mark of the church. This is a distinctive of Christians that Jesus wants us to be really good at. And we're going to talk a bit more about that in a minute. So the first way to handle hurt is to stay sweet. And then the next thing is to leave it in the king's hand. Because what happened was, after David sent them off to Jericho to stay sweet and regrow their beards, guess what happened? David took this matter into his hands. He took it into his hands. He didn't let it go unnoticed. He didn't let it go unchecked. He took it into his hands. And sometimes when we get hurt, we want to handle that hurt in a way that we think is best. But God says, leave it in the king's hands. Leave the hurt, leave the situation, and leave the one who hurt you in the hands of the king. Because he says, vengeance is mine, I will repay. Now, we could say that sometimes and be like, man, God's going to smash that person. Like, they hurt me, God's going to blow their world up. And he will. But it won't be in the Old Testament founder of a nation type way where he just came and obliterated people. It'll be in a new covenant fatherhood way where the father goes after people, and what blowing it up looks like is that he'll just pour love into their life until they realize that they hurt you, and they'll come back and apologize and try to seek out reconciliation. That's actually God's heart. He's not like, man, my colleague really hurt me yesterday. God, just get him fired. You know, I'm going to leave it in the king's hands, God. You sort it out. God's like, don't be surprised if you see God bless the person that hurt you. But just know that's part of God handling the situation. Because it's God's goodness, Romans tells us, that leads us to repentance, the goodness of God. And so can I encourage us in handling hurt, let's leave it in the hands of the King. Amen? Let's not take matters into our own hands. We don't have the wisdom for that. We're not wise enough to try to handle stuff, especially when we're hurt. When we leave it in His hands, He takes care of us, and He takes care of the situation and the person who hurt us in a way that's best for them and best for us. Is that good news today? Leave it in the hands of the King. Let the King handle it. See, hurt, if it's not handled right, it can become an offense. If you leave hurt in the hands of anger, if you leave hurt in the hands of revenge or bitterness, it can quickly become a deep-rooted offense. And when offense finds root and place in our heart, what it means is that we haven't handled our hurt right. And now we're in this really dangerous place called offended. And when we become offended at people, it's a really, really bad place for us to be in. I'm going to show you why. So here's my encouragement before we unpack offense is this. Let Jesus handle your hurt before your hurt handles you. Let Jesus handle your hurt before your hurt handles you. I'd rather be in the hands of God than in the hands of hurt. Are you with me? And so here's the thing. Hurt is this very real human emotion. We can't avoid it. We can't escape it. Even Jesus was hurt, both physically and emotionally. He was betrayed. He was rejected. He was humiliated. He was falsely accused. He was misunderstood by almost every person in his life, in his world. And just as hurt and pain is a very real emotion, how many people know that so is anger? And so is rage, and so is bitterness and unforgiveness. These are natural, even automatic human responses. How many people have experienced that you don't have to work yourself up to get mad at somebody? You don't have to encourage yourself to be mad at somebody after being hurt. It's just an automatic emotion, right? It just comes. It's just like, boom, it's there. Somebody hurt you and all of a sudden you're angry. You didn't ask for this. You didn't invite this in. You didn't take a course on how to get angry. It just happened, right? I mean, thoughts of bitterness and revenge and how to bring payback, all of that just comes. Like maybe you don't have a creative bone in your body, so you think. But when it comes to being mad at someone and how to let them know that you're mad, all of a sudden it's like creativity is just exploding on the inside of you. It's like, man, where did that come from? Wow. That'd make an incredible movie scene. And so these are human responses, right? These are natural human responses. But guess what? We're not natural humans anymore. We're not just humans now. We're new creations. Recreated, the Bible says, by the power of the Holy Spirit into the image of Jesus. Now, Jesus wasn't just human. He was God and human. He was the God-man. And so the image that we're called to walk in is human, yes, but also with the character and Christ-likeness image of God. And here's what's real for Jesus. Just as hurt and pain was experienced by him, and yes, Jesus was hurt and he experienced other people's mistreatment of him, yet he didn't respond with a natural human response. Jesus, like all of us, felt the pain of hurt and rejection and shame and betrayal and all of these things that can happen in our life. But forgiveness was the constant response that Jesus had to hurt. That was his response. And for us as Christians, this can become a very real response. And I believe Jesus wants to lead all of us to a place where we're so in touch with how he responds to hurt that it becomes automatic for us. That it doesn't become a 3-year process that we have to go to counseling for and all these things every single time we get hurt. But it's like, man, I begin to have an intuitive new reality that I actually forgive when I get hurt. That's just becomes who I am. Not because I'm just laboring so hard, but it's because it's just who is inside of me. I am a new creation. You do have the Spirit of the living God on the inside of you. And so just as hurt is real, so can forgiveness become real in our lives. You know, Peter came to Jesus and started asking Jesus how many times he needed to forgive somebody. And Peter, I think, thought he was being generous here. He's like, Jesus, how many times would you expect me to forgive somebody that's hurt me? You can read about it in Matthew 18:21. And Peter says, like 7 times? 7 times a day? Because this person's just hurt me 6 times, and I've probably got 1 more left in me, but that's it. I'm ready to write them off now. But I need the okay from you, Jesus. I need to know that you're going to be cool with this. And Jesus is like, no, not 7 times. Maybe Peter was kind of getting excited at that point, thinking, oh, sweet, like less than that. Like we're just going to give him 2 chances, that's it. You're the guy of the second chance, but then that's it, no more. Jesus is like, no, not 7 times, not 7 times a day. Peter, catch this. How about 7 times 70? In Luke 17, it's kind of a similar conversation, and Jesus talks about forgive them as many times as they offend you in any given day. And here's the thing about 7 times 70 is that actually equals 490. And so 490 times a day, if you put it in a 24-hour period, if you didn't go to sleep, and you were just hanging out with people for 24 hours, I can guarantee there'll be some hurt, there'll be some crazy things said, it'll be really weird, so don't do that very often. I've done it before. 490 times a day equals about once every 3 minutes. So how long can I stay bitter at someone? Well, you've got about 3 minutes, all right? You've got about 3 minutes. So breathe in, imagine all this crazy stuff, and then just like 3 minutes, okay, it's time to forgive. Can you imagine if we lived like that? You see, Peter came with a number that was all about keeping score. How many times, Jesus? 7? This guy's hurt me 5 times already today. I'm keeping score. But Jesus came with a number that was all about losing count. This is the gospel. See, if you hurt me 5, 6 times a day, I could probably pinpoint it. Okay, 11 a.m., my wife said something to me that I didn't find very helpful. Okay, then at 12 p.m., she didn't understand what I was going through in that moment, so I feel hurt and misunderstood. I could probably count it through the day. But if I'm talking 490, if I'm talking every 3 minutes, man, I am going to lose score. I'm going to lose count pretty quickly and forget where I'm up to and just go, oh, well, forget this, man. I'll just forgive you every time. Just let's roll with how Jesus did it. Are you with me? Jesus calls us to this lifestyle of forgiveness that's not about keeping score. It's actually about losing count. And the more frequently you forgive, the easier it is to lose count. You just start forgiving everyone. Eventually be like, how many times that person? Oh, I have no idea, man. I just know that I'm ready to forgive anytime. Wouldn't it be incredible if we had a church full of people that live like that? Wouldn't it be incredible if our city started to experience those kind of colleagues, those kind of bosses, those kind of student partners that work in groups, those kind of people in high school. I mean, can you imagine what people are like, who are you? Because this is one area, the world can kind of match you on a lot of things. The world can match you maybe and look like they have the blessing of God in terms of material stuff. People can seem happy. People can do that. What's one thing the world doesn't have the capacity to do, and that is to forgive. It's a Christ response. It's a Jesus way. Forgiveness is the Jesus way. It's not our way. It's not the human way. It's Jesus' way. The more frequently you forgive, the easier it is to lose count. I love that. How good's Jesus? Aren't you glad that he's lost count with you? So let's talk about offense real quick. Because I think offense is something that can really draw people's progress in life to a halt. Offense can destroy relationships. Offense can just bring a divide between two people, and God's not about that. And we heard last week, we actually did do a series on it last year. Last week, about preserving the unity of the Spirit. And by the way, wasn't Diane just incredible last week? Amazing. If you missed her message last week, I would really encourage you to get the podcast and get it from our Facebook page or website. And it's awesome. Or the podcast app, whatever. But offense is this terrible condition that sets in when we don't handle hurt properly. And Jesus said it's impossible that offense that it won't come. But when it does come, we've got to know how to handle it. And here's what offense means in the Bible. In the New Testament, the word offense comes from a Greek word called scandalon. I'm really sorry if that's your last name. I used to know some people called Scanlon. I kind of think about last names sometimes when I hear that. I was going to say something real cheeky there, but I won't. Scandalon. Somebody say that with me. Scandalon. I guess that's where we get the word scandalous and scandal from. But the name scandalon, the word scandalon, what it actually is a picture of, what it actually means from ancient times is that it was the part of a trap, a stick inside of a trap that you put the bait on when you're trying to catch an animal. Now, you might have read John Bevere's famous book called The Bait of Satan, and he wrote a whole book about this and had a whole amazing world tour that he preached this message on. Don't you love guys that get to do that? That would be so good. You get so good at preaching the same message. It would be awesome. Pastors, we've got to come up with a new message every single time. But John Bevere had this incredible book, and scandal, if you picture a trap, any kind of trap has got like a trigger mechanism. And that trigger mechanism is where the bait gets put. And when the animal comes in and takes of the bait, the trigger mechanism is engaged and the trap is set into motion. And olden day traps normally had kind of like fences or some kind of cage that a door would shut or a trap would fall down, and then your catch has been captured. And see, the reason it was coined, the phrase was coined bait of Satan, is that because Satan loves it when people hurt each other. And it's actually like the very bait to trap people into a cage of offense. That if Satan could convince us to not forgive that person and to justify why they don't deserve my forgiveness or why it's an unforgivable sin and the thing they did to me, the way they hurt me was beyond what anyone's ever done and I can't forgive them, then we have actually taken the very bait that has activated a trap over our life. And so when I think of the word offense, and I want you to picture it like this, I think of the word offense, I think of fences that come around my life. Then if I take on offense, I am actually building a fence around me, and I'm allowing the enemy to cage me in. And I can tell you right now that God never intended us to live in some kind of cage or some kind of fence. He's called us to be free. Whom the Son sets free is free indeed. But the offense is the trigger point for a trap. Scandalon. So I want to say, don't let offense put a fence around your heart in 2019. How do we handle hurt so it doesn't end up at being an offense? What was the first point we had? We stay sweet. We leave it in the hands of the King. Can you chuck the next one up for me, man? We lose count. We stay sweet. All right, you're going to get this, right? We leave it in the King's hands. We lose count. We always forgive. I don't know if that's exactly the point. Sorry, guys. My points kind of went out of order for some reason. We choose forgiveness. There we go. We choose forgiveness. How do I not take the bait of this trap called offense that's going to fence me in? And doesn't just fence in my life, fences my heart. It fences my heart, and it means that I can't connect to people. But the thing is, I'm created to be connected. So if I'm trapped in, my heart is trapped, I'm keeping people out, and I'm keeping myself in, and I'm not living to the way God has called me to live. Living way below. Choose forgiveness. You know, I can tell you the story, it might gross you out a little bit, but you definitely won't forget this point, all right? So the other week I was swimming with my boys at the arena, and we were swimming around this like rapids thing, and we're doing some sweet underwater diving. We're all learning, like Hunter's learning how to swim underwater. We've got our goggles on, and so we're cruising down. I'm getting like really low to the ground. So then I go up, and I scrape my knee on the bottom of the pool, and it was like, and I was like, oh, that's not gonna be good. And I came up and I just like sliced this top layer off my knee, and I was like, this is not good. Oh no. So I went out, got it all cleaned up, got some, supposedly waterproof Band-Aid on there and all that stuff. Went back into the pool, which I probably shouldn't have done. A couple of days later, it's like fully infected. I'm thinking it's just going to heal up and be okay. It's fully infected. I mean, I squeezed it and like pus came out. I told you, you're never going to forget this, right? And so I was like, I need to go to the doctor. And I go to the doctor, and he's like, you need a tetanus shot, antibiotics. And I was like, bro, I had a tetanus shot not that long ago. It's like, if you don't get a tetanus shot, you might end up in like emergency with an IV trying to clean this thing up. And I was like, really? Is it really that bad? Anyway, I had to go all this stuff. I had this infection. And later that week, it still wasn't really getting much better because the infection was so full. I realized that the infection had formed this top layer on top. And it was just nasty. And so I had this revelation that what I had to do was like peel off all the stuff and get salt water and just pour it on and like wipe it in and just do my own surgery on this thing. I was like, that's it. I've been watching The Resident. I've seen Grey's Anatomy. I'm just going to go for it. So I started doing that. And then like, honestly, within a couple of days, this thing was almost as good as new. You know what happens when we get hurt, when we get wounded, God starts working towards healing us straight away. He's like, I'm going to heal you instantly. My spirit's within you. My life is within you. We're going to work this out. But if we don't handle that hurt properly, then infection can set in. That's called offense. And once offense gets in, it can form this barrier around the wound, and it's like stopping the antibiotics, it's stopping the healing power, it's trying to stop all this stuff from getting in to heal up. And sometimes the only formula, the only way to get to that place of forgiveness and get to that place of letting the life of God work through our body is to go directly to the wound and peel it back open before God. Come on, somebody. Peel our heart back open before Him. Say, God, just take out all this stuff. Let your healing power flow and empower me right now to forgive and to let it go. To forgive and let it go. And I guarantee you that in that moment, quick, fast healing power is released and offenses fall. You know, it's so great to just live free with people and to not feel like you have to hide from somebody and not feel like there's an issue that's unresolved. And when you just live like you've never been hurt, like this book says, it's the greatest way to live. It's the freest way to live. And so my final point today is choose forgiveness every time. How do I handle hurt? Choose forgiveness. I like to say this, and there's a verse that we like to talk about. I've talked about it a few times before. I'm going to skip this verse. Sorry, guys. I got too much content. It's not fair. No. I love this in Ephesians chapter 4. And it's basically, for me, it's talking about like prepaid forgiveness. How many people ever had a prepaid mobile phone? So you don't have to worry if there's money in your account. You don't have to worry if something's going on because you've prepaid the certain amount, right? You've prepaid for these phone calls. You're like, man, yeah, I can make a call. And this back in the day, right? Yeah, I got credit. Boom. Don't worry, I'll text them. I got heaps of credit. I just topped it up. Imagine living a life with prepaid forgiveness. Ephesians 4, I'll read it in the Passion Translation. Actually, let's go to the New Living first, and then we'll do the Passion. It says this in verse 31. Get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, and slander, as well as all types of behavior. Now, think about this in the context of hurt. Why would you have bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, slander, as well as different evil behavior? Why would you have that? Because you've been hurt. What stirs that stuff up? Hurt. Yeah? What stirs up bitterness, anger? It's hurt, pain. In verse 32 says, instead of that, be kind to each other, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, just as God, through Christ, has forgiven you. Lay aside, this is in the Passion Translation, lay aside bitter words, temper tantrums. That's speaking to somebody today. Revenge, profanities, and insults. But instead, be kind and affectionate toward one another. Has God graciously forgiven you? Then graciously forgive one another in the depths of Christ's love. There's another verse in the Bible that I love, which I didn't get to bring into the message today, but it says, make allowances for other people's faults. Prepaid forgiveness. Can you imagine if our disposition was, I'm ready to forgive? I'm not going to be alarmed when someone hurts me because I know hurt is a part of life, but here's how I handle my hurt, is that I'm already ready to forgive. I've already chosen to forgive. I've already decided, I've already prepaid up my forgiver with enough credit to last at least the rest of the week. Then I'm going to go into the presence of God and I'm going to receive more and keep recharging my forgiver so I'm ready to forgive no matter what comes my way. And some hurts will require, just maybe a couple of text message worth of prepaid drawdown. Some are going to be like that overseas call that you just couldn't believe that anyone's even allowed to charge that much for a phone call. This is before we had, Skype and all this stuff. But here's the thing. Jesus has the unlimited account. Jesus has unlimited supply. In fact, he never responded with any other response than forgiveness. Even when he was in anger, he still chose to forgive. From the cross, can you imagine any other place of greater hurt? You've been crucified, literally. Nails through hands, whipped, insulted, spat upon, had the beard pulled out. People don't have a clue who you are. They have no idea. They're believing lies. They're shouting things that aren't true. People who you thought were with you are now against you. He's literally up on the cross. We say that as a figure of speech now. Man, I've been crucified this week in my workplace. Man, they were going to pin me to the cross. Okay, Jesus actually was on the cross. And while this is all going on and his hurt is at its highest moment, Jesus responds like this. Here's how he handled his hurt. Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they do. Could we just take our lead from Jesus today? Could we lean in to the ultimate hurt handler, Jesus? Say, Jesus, help me to forgive, to choose forgiveness at every turn.
Thanks so much for joining us on the podcast today. If this message has been a blessing to you and helpful for you, why not consider sharing it with a friend and get the word out? If you're living in the city of Perth, we'd love to see you in one of our services on a Sunday. So why don't you jump on our website, dreamlifechurch.com, to find out what's happening. We hope to see you soon. God bless.